The tectonic plates of our world are shifting. This year, the stock market rallied around all things AI. Today with us in the studio, we have those who operate on the cutting edge of chip manufacturing, the very building blocks on which our future is built. I welcome the Tech Hero nominees for 2024. Welcome to this special edition of CIO TV, welcoming the Tech Hero nominees for 2024. These exceptional organizations have been nominated for their outstanding achievements. They are thriving in a very rapidly evolving landscape and a highly charged geopolitical one at that. So let me start by welcoming my guest today. With me on the couch today is Nick Smarling, the Managing Director and Partner of BCG, Alois Krechting, Senior Vice President of ASML Business Services, Ahura Teherani, IT Manager of Nearfield Instruments, and our very own Rob Bielefeld, CEO of ICT Media and a member of the jury for the Tech Hero Award. So Rob, let me start with you. ICT Media is well known for the CIO of the Year Award. Why a Tech Hero Award?
Yeah, that's a good one, Madeleine, thanks. So at first, the CEO of the Year Award is of course a personal award. It's about the person, it's about his or her role and performing outcomes and leadership, etc. But if you look to, I think, the global economy and you look to the sense of if having organizations as inspiration, then you really need to step up this ladder and acknowledge those organizations that made tremendous transformations in their digital shifts, right? So Tech Heroes as an organization.
Absolutely, super important for the Dutch economy as well.
Correct.
And Nick, you were a fellow member of the jury, so you see this landscape evolving. What did you notice in the last 12, 24 months? What is shifting?
So that's actually a very interesting question. So AI, as per your introduction, is one of the key shifts that we have been witnessing for the last 24 months. It's even to the fact that we as BCG have updated our digital acceleration index to make sure that the AI component is a fundamental integrated part of how we assess companies, to what extent they are future built. We'll come to that in a bit. So I would say if I need to give one trend, I would say the emergence of AI in both product development, business operations, and more in back-end IT is one of the key trends that we have been witnessing for the last 24 months.
And you also brought a slide with you, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Which you use, I think, as part of the jury to assess companies on their maturity in this ladder. Can you explain a little bit about what you looked at?
Yeah, no, happy to do so. And I think the first part, the familiar followers of this television show would be known that we usually use the Digital Acceleration Index as the mechanism to test or to score how well the candidates perform on a digital maturity scale. But I'm very glad to announce that as of 2024, we have updated the way how we look at those companies by integrating that AI component actually in that. So we have done a survey of 1,000 companies across multiple industries, across multiple sectors, to really understand where do we currently stand. And the categories are still a little bit the same. However, they have now an AI component to it. So we have structured them in stagnating, emerging, scaling, and what we call future build, which is the category of organization that actually emerge in the digital era, in the era where your tectonic plates are shifting, Madeleine. So if we then look to the candidates that we have today, which are two fantastic candidates, first of all, congratulations with your nomination. I think that's already very honorable. Both working in the semiconductor industry. You've been talking about that in your introduction as well. And on the survey, we have put the global average for semiconductors compared to the rest. And that's actually quite interesting because in BCG, we always have a bit of an internal debate before the survey comes out. What are now the winning and leading industries that we are expecting? And we thought that semiconductor would really outperform the global average. And what you now do see is they outperform the global average. Yes, they do, but by a little bit. So I'd love to understand what is the reason for them not being all the way on the right-hand side, where they are on their products, which are indeed cutting edge. But if we look towards how they score on AI, less so. So that's a bit of a discussion I'd like to have today.
Very interesting. Maybe we can learn something from Roger Federer, who only wins 51% of his balls. But because he goes for that final 1%, it makes all the difference, right? Ahura, Nearfield Instruments, maybe not such a household name for everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about what Nearfield Instrument does? I think if I got this right, you're sort of selling the shovels to the gold miners.
That's true. We're building machines for semiconductor who can detect and also do the metrology and detection of the chips. So, for example, if the other machine, for example, ASML machine, do the lithography, our machine goes to do the metrology of it and check if there's any problems or any things in it and report it back to the fab to make it better production.
This is quite complex material. We have a little movie clip for you.
At Nearfield Instruments, we bring innovative nanoscale metrology solutions to the process control challenges in the semiconductor industry. Quadra is our high-throughput scanning probe metrology system, well-suited for the characterization of the high-end semiconductor manufacturing nodes in a high-volume manufacturing environment. 4 miniaturized atomic force microscopy heads of Quadra can measure a variety of structures on 300mm wafers in an automated way. We work with our customers to demonstrate the value that Quadra brings to the metrology challenges encountered in advanced semiconductor manufacturing. Let us take you along the process of measuring your wafers with Quadra. When our customers ship us their wafers, we handle them with utmost care and diligence. Our Quadra systems are located inside a clean room in order to maintain the cleanliness levels required in advanced semiconductor manufacturing. When we receive the FOUPs from our customers, we carefully unpack the outer packaging around the FOUP and clean the inner packaging in our first goods lock to minimize the contamination that can enter our clean rooms. Then, in the second goods lock, we remove the inner packaging around the FOUP and get the wafers inside our clean room, where our Quadra systems are located. All of the wafers that we receive from our various customers are handled with utmost care to protect the data privacy of our customers. We label the FOUPs with clear and distinct code names, and when they are not being measured, we store them in a locked cabinet to which NFI employees have access on a need-to-know basis. With this diligence, we ensure that the identities and sensitive information from our customers are protected.
Ahura, this looks like such an impressive operation. The world feels like an exciting and a scary place at the same time. What are your opportunities and threats as an IT manager in Nearfield Instruments?
Yes, I start with opportunities. The opportunities because we build a new machine, new technology for metrology and detection, which is not disruptive. We cannot change any surface of wafers. We can go deeper and narrow and give a better result than other technologies. So, because now the chip industry goes to 2 nanometer or even beyond that, our technology can help industry to go further. And the threats, of course, there are many kind of security measurements, the cybersecurity attacks, and those things are the threat that not only our company but also the other companies in this industry facing.
A very geopolitically charged playing field. I saw with ASML, the world is really dynamic, new export restrictions. So Alois, what keeps you up at night with this?
Yeah, it's a similar story. Yeah? So we have many threats coming from outside. Since we own technology that defines the edge of what humankind can do at the moment when it goes to manipulating atoms. So the chips with the 2 nanometer technology is so impressive. Everybody wants to know how that works. And yeah, we need to be, we like on the other hand also to collaborate. I see there's a unique collaboration between the parties, but sometimes they are a little bit less friendly, and then those you want to keep out. There's also an internal challenge, I would say, because companies like yours as well, also true for ASML, we sometimes grow so rapidly and so successfully, then that also can cause a risk You need to organize your internal work and also always be skeptical about what is next. Because if you are so successful for such a long period of time, yeah, there are a lot of companies that went down by that assumption that it will continue forever. So we have to remain sharp. That's more an internal threat, I would say.
Yes, yeah. So resting on your laurels and not going for that 1%.
Yeah.
So Nick, if you listen to this, is this typical of your portfolio, or are these two companies a little bit special?
I think those companies are very special. I think that's also why they are nominated for the Tech Hero Award. They operate really on the cutting edge, on the possibilities of today. I think both organizations are really in a growth mindset and have a strong product focus. So then I think the interesting thing to explore is also how the tech leaders of those organizations, the tech heroes, are actually making sure that on the one hand side they balance and they make sure they fuel the growth, but on the other side balance, let's say, the internal processes that you also need to have in order to scale in a good way. I think that's an interesting challenge for a organization. If we all go back to Tracy and Wiersma, which are really product-led, so the product is really the value proposition of the organization. So how do you cope as an IT leader in that domain? I think that's a very special type of organization that we have to deal with here. Yeah.
Yes, and I think the collaborators are the winners, right? The people who build platforms, but to do that in a safe and secure way. Alois, you also brought a short video with you. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
Today, his parents don't care about our critical dimensions or overlay calculations. And her daughter has no idea. In her hand, she's holding 1 million tiny transistors. And her best friend doesn't realize that she helps push technology forward. Just like most people will never know, the technology they enable can save lives. Because seeing your son make an impact on the world is what matters. As for her, she's no longer worried about her English class. Made possible by our anonymous heroes. It's in these moments that we find our purpose. To push technology to new limits and make the seemingly impossible possible. Unlocking the potential within everyone. We are ASML.
Alois, you said technology can be great or it can be a total waste. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, that's a daunting sentence, right? So, yeah, I think if you look back at the history, we made a lot of promises as IT professionals, as tech heroes. And if you would add up all these promises, then we would all be out of a job and we will all be sitting in a nice house somewhere in Spain or so. But unfortunately, we still are very busy, right? So we have to work very, very hard. And that is because maybe all of those promises did not entirely deliver what we hoped for. So, for example, also our productivity is something that we measure, also did not really move in the last years. So despite all these investments. So I think the AI is indeed very promising. We see a lot of use cases. But I would say that we need to be more careful in introducing new technology into the world. You need to clearly know what is the objective you want to solve. Mm-hmm. Can people actually adopt to that technology? Because sometimes, yeah, you see that certain technology become only available for a very small group of people. How do you actually know that it is absorbed and adopted? All of these questions around it, sometimes we don't answer that properly. And what I also see is that some of these new technologies, they become more sensitive about the quality of data. So all of these things around it, we need to approach these things more in a holistic manner. And if you don't do it, it's a total waste. So we had some nice people that played with technology and had fun and delivers nothing. Or some cases we have spot on. If you did it really well, proper problem statement, very holistic, then you have a hit and then it can fly. So therefore we need to do it in a holistic way.
And I think we're also at a moment, right, where we have unintended consequences. So, for instance, the social media platforms told their algorithms optimize for engagement, get the eyeballs on there. And what did those things learn? We are geared towards anxiety and fear. Those things keep us engaged. And scandal and things and conspiracies keep us engaged far longer than friendly cat videos.
Exactly, and sometimes, but sometimes it even makes things much worse. Sometimes it fuels the hate between people, or it's used to steer political events. It's really bad. So in this case, it's not managed properly. Yeah. And then the added value of all this is in the end disastrous. So that's a thing.
Also for our planet, right?
Yes.
Or you are actually creating a new market, if you think about this. Can you explain maybe a little bit where this is going next in your estimation?
Let's say, first of all, we are scaling up a company. So, till last year or 2 years ago, it was a small group of genius people who were working together to build a machine that can work. And now we have a proven number of machine that it works, and now is also the first machines in the Samsung fab. So it is working. Now people have to think about how we can grow ourselves, how we can scale up the production. And we cannot do that without proper information, proper data, inside data to look at the, for example, processes and see, excuse me, and see what is the trend there. For example, our SCM for logistic, the suppliers. We have to help our manufacturer to grow, and that is exponential. And for that, we need, of course, we need to gather data. Maybe with help of AI a little bit, we can help ourselves to better planning and using the data in a proper way. Short, I can say that the advantage that we have comparing to ASML is, have the legacy data, have lots of process embedded in the system, and if they want to do the change, it's a little bit harder. The change will cost more time and energy for them than us, because we are just growing, and now we can implement the best practices, which, for example, we can learn from ASML or other companies. We don't have that legacy, so therefore we can go further in the technology, at least in this case.
And this pace of disruption is just accelerating. Rob, you speak to so many leaders. What do you hear about this? How do people keep up the human element?
Well, an interesting part first is that what I find very inspiring, if you look at from product cycle, is that you, in this category, semiconductors, you nearly go to Moore's law, right? Yeah. And that's if you grasp that idea, and you constantly are on the edge and you're on the leadership, that's heavy, right? That's unique. On the other side, in return to your question, is the question pops in a certain way is, initially you saw it was all about business outcome, right? But only from a result management perspective, so the financial paragraph that. Today, and I think what you add to that is that the purpose is a very deep one. But it brings also a different approach about how you can put that purpose throughout of your whole organization and change your organization model, your business model, and your operating model. And that's interesting, because suddenly it's not in the P&L, the belows only, right? But it's really in how I contribute to the world. And that is, I think, if I talk with some chief execs, that's I find very inspiring.
And I think this is the key thing that sets apart the leaders and the laggards, right? Is the type of leadership that you foster.
Absolutely. If you go P&L or budgeting 5+ or whatever, no, this is, and I think you mentioned it in the start. So from out of this industry, right, it's a building block, right? It's a lot of things in the world are happening on the basis of these building blocks, right? So that's interesting. How does the leaders themselves are understanding their role, but also taking their role, right? Because it's two ways, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think what's very interesting here is also the evolution, right? What we all bring to the table. So, Ahura, you grew up in the Middle East, you studied in India, you now live in the Netherlands. So, you have a very interesting package in your backpack.
Yes.
And I also know Hamed is really a strong sponsor. Your CEO is a very strong sponsor of diversity and inclusion. So, what did your early experiences teach you that you now bring with you today to your role?
First of all, I've faced different cultures. I was even living in different cultures. So living those cultures help you to understand better what is the human element of differences and also the similarity between human elements. So fortunately now, when I'm in this multicultural company, which has more than 30, 35 nationalities in just a small company of 180, 90, we can understand each other. We can do things, really big things together, and it's just, if you look at it as from the outside, it's just a human thing to do. And that's a difference, that we can build up our team based on the similarities rather than the differences. Of course, differences help us to understand the things better, to challenge each other, and that's also helpful in this company. But on the other hand, what I have in my background can help me to build up a good team, at least in IT, helping each other, talking to each other in the best way as possible.
Yeah, translating between cultures.
Yeah,
I find myself doing that quite a bit as well.
Yeah, of course.
And to stay at the forefront in such rapidly expanding and growing companies, Alois, I do want to ask you, how do you learn? How do you keep yourself fresh? How do you grow? How do you invest in yourself?
Well, that's a tricky question. I love, by the way, your story, Ahura. Thanks for that. It's beautiful to see the inclusion that you vibrate. It's cool. Yeah, if you, that must be the same for you. If you are so much in growth mode, some years you grow by 30% per year.
Yeah.
That's massive. And 30% becomes, of course, even in absolute terms, even bigger and bigger. And then if you then still want to learn, sometimes you really learn on the job. So we of course apply the 70-20-10 logic. So sometimes we are thrown in a class. But yeah, that's maybe a little bit less than 10% for us, because in the reality, sometimes we define things how they are in the industry. That's basically our position at the moment. So sometimes we have to make those mistakes.
Of course.
And we like to make them together with a lot of other people. So I think that's the unique thing, is to, and this goes back a long way in the Dutch history, I think, that to create a network to collaborate with. Maybe it's also because we are such a small country, that could well be. We had to collaborate, we had to speak other languages. You speak even more languages than I do, Ahura. But the Dutch also typically speak a lot of languages because they are so small. Nobody wants to speak Dutch, so we have to learn the other languages, right? And because of that, the capabilities that we are using is to collaborate with our customers and our vendors, goes really deeply rooted. And the challenge is, in reality, is that, yeah, but there are also some people that want to make misuse of that knowledge exchange. So there's where the balance is. But for now, I think we are still able to do a very good collaboration.
And for your personal learning, you also sit on a couple of supervisory boards, right?
Yeah.
So, which gives you, I guess, more of an outside-in perspective and forces you into a strategic layer.
Yes.
How does that enrich you as a person in terms of your learning?
Yeah, I love that because then you are in a completely different industry. And different industries often say, yeah, but this is not how it works here. And then you can always ask the stupid question, why not? And then people become silent because they say, yeah, well, actually, if you put it like that, maybe it could work here as well. And that's the point about diversion and inclusion. Therefore, I love your story so much. Then you trigger other ideas. So, and I also learned the other way around, of course, as well. And I also did. I also went to a training in one of the Dutch universities for supervisory board training. Mm-hmm. That gave me also extra insight. And in general, and this sounds really funny, but sometimes we make a joke in large corporations to say we should assume that there is more intelligence outside the company than within the company. And of course, when you say it like that, it's super logical, but we don't always act like that. We always try to make our own mistakes. But some of the mistakes already have been made, so...
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great one, right?
That's a great one. That's right. But you often see that in this whole transformation, and especially from a macroeconomic point of view, right, in conjunction with the changes in society, is that kind of reflection is not handled well, right? And that's, I think, the biggest problem we got, right? So we are still pushing a lot on the financials, right? And I think that is an absolute miss, right?
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
an absolute miss. We could do much better if we overcome that.
I would say, for example, you mentioned the Moore law, but now the new trend even in the industry is how we can use less energy. Now it's become more and more important, for example, to use less energy. So actually, back to your question, we collaborate with each other, we get knowledge from each other, and we see, okay, the new trend is, for example, if we want to build a data center for AI, it costs lots of energy. Mm-hmm. And how we can, from our side, to help actually environment to reduce the number, not only Moore's law, which is making more, putting more transistor in the same chip after 2 years or 18 months, but also reduce the number of the capacity that we use for our chips.
But in that context, what I like to see is happening, and you see this happening, I guess, in a couple of industries, is that normally you do a couple of steps, right? And you say, okay, what's the next? Oh, let's go photon, or let's go quantum, right? So, but what you see happening, if you make more ROI on the subject here in semi, right? We could profit much more of that, right? But often from an economic perspective, you're driven to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, right? And I think there it fails, because that hunger to the next doesn't provide you that perfect ROI on those whole R&Ds in terms of semiconductor, for an example. But that's my opinion.
The same thing is true of humans, right? Growth happens after rest. So thank you so much to all of my guests. You've been brilliant. You heard it here today. AI definitely is the future. It can only be built from a position of rest. And I also wish all the best to our third nominee, who is not at the table today. That is Mews. That is the platform for a new era of hospitality. Definitely be sure to catch them at CIO Day. Thank you.